Happiness is beautiful, it's a kind reality. Happiness is the highest good, happiness is free. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.
Welcome to the Happiness Show. This is George Ortega. I'm here to talk about happiness, because happiness is, always has been, and always will be the point of it all. Today we're going to be talking about happiness and priorities. Basically our show today is about maintaining our happiness, becoming happier both as individuals and as a world. It's important to prioritize our time and to prioritize the activities that we devote our lives to, both on a day-to-day basis and in more general terms. Okay, some of the things we have to prioritize, for example, are like our money, success, education, the kinds of goals that we generally set for ourselves, that we devote our time to on a day-to-day basis, really need to be prioritized. And this program is also going to be about goodness, because while prioritizing our activities is very important to our personal happiness, prioritizing our activities in relation to goodness is very important in terms of our global happiness, the happiness of others, our family, our communities, and the world in general at large. So I want to give you an example of something that I'm, kind of like a decision I'm confronting that relates to this. That it's a decision that relates between my personal happiness and the happiness of others, and how goodness comes to be a consideration. Okay, in general, I love doing these shows. I like researching happiness. I like promoting happiness, directly, like this, giving advice, doing research, connecting with people, promoting ideas, concepts and all. And that's what I really enjoy doing the most, I think. But there are other factors that come into play, and this can relate to also, let's say, if we have families and there are certain things we like doing that we would rather do, but we know we can't do what we want to do always, because there are things that need to be done that require our attention, for the sake of not just ourselves, but for the sake of others. So in my personal experience recently, I've been devoting time to a project that I call profit donation capitalism. Here's the basic rationale. I know that very poor people can be very happy. Nigeria is the happiest country in the world. Mexico is very happy. El Salvador. These are countries that don't have much money, and they're actually happier as countries than we are here in the United States, which is wonderful. However, in general, according to the research, the under the poverty line for individuals, it's much harder to be happier, to be as happy as those of us who have more. And so the key fact that I had to address is that about half of our world's population lives on less than $3 a day. And so, this advice about becoming happier isn't really going to serve them very well, if they're not having their basic needs tended to, their food and clothing and housing. So I considered that, well, in order to help that half of the world that really needs another kind of help, the right thing to do, is to really devote time to a project that isn't directly related to my personal happiness. It's not what gives me the greatest happiness and all, but it's certainly, I think, what's needed for the happiness of this half the world. Very briefly, the idea is, I did a show on this. I think it probably aired last week. It's on the website at www.profitdonationcapitalism.org, and now again at www.thehappinessshow.com. And it's about how profit donation capitalism can help these, very poor people to get the funding they need for food and clothing and all through the products we this show isn't about that, but basically just to explain it in very brief detail. When we go to supermarkets and stores, if our leaders and entrepreneurs and philanthropists will help us with this, when we buy the products we need to buy, the food products, rather than buying products from rich corporations who generally don't, they're owned by stockholders and they generally don't help to feed these people. We'd be buying products directly from companies who would then donate the profits to these worthy causes. And this is not just about hunger and homelessness and all that. It's about protecting the environment, education, healthcare, and all. So, but anyway, that's so in terms of prioritizing, there are sometimes things that come up that we have to devote our attention to that we may not want to do, yet they're the right thing to do. And that's, I think, the situation that I'm facing personally at this time in my life. And I think, I'm making the right decision. But, that doesn't mean, even though I'm doing what I perhaps prefer not to be doing, it certainly doesn't mean that has to limit my happiness in any way. It simply means that it's a challenge. A new project, something we'd rather not do, may not be something that we naturally feel comfortable doing or naturally brings us the most joy. But again, it can present itself as a challenge for how we can learn to enjoy whatever it is that life calls upon us to do. Okay, we have to, we have to prioritize goodness because of the people around us. Again, if happiness was just about ourselves, then certainly we can, revolve our lives around just what makes us the happiest, and just do simply what we feel best, what we enjoy doing the most, and it would be that simple. But since we have our families, our friends, our spouse that must be considered, the world in general, then we do have to have goodness be a very important component in this. And this prioritization concept is so complicated, not just for us as individuals, but for the world in general. I want to give you an example of something, again, from my personal life that explains this a bit in more detail about how complicated deciding, even among different things to do that are good, which is more important. I belong to the Ethical Culture Society. I'm on their board of trustees here in White Plains, and they sponsor this show, actually. And recently there was a talk about the rights of gays. How there needs to be efforts expended to make sure that they have the same rights afforded to regular individuals, to the ordinary, the normal population. And in general, I'm in favor of supporting gay rights because they make a lot of sense. Like, for example, if someone who's gay is in a hospital, their gay partner can't visit them like a husband and wife could visit each other because they're not family. That doesn't seem right. And also, I think, married couples are afforded a lot of financial advantages that gay couples, are not. And again, my personal view is that they should be afforded these same rights. But the talk was about gay rights, and gay rights are important, but there are other aspects of the world that are important also. I basically made a point at a meeting where that issue was presented that in 1992 the gay population was very instrumental in electing Bill Clinton, who I think more so than his opponent represented values that hopefully would make the world better. That's sometimes arguable, in the sense of whether it's right to go to war to free people. In my opinion, I think what we did in Iraq was right because Hussein killed 1 million of its people, and it just didn't seem right to allow that. But in terms of politics and being pragmatic, it was my view that in '92 the gays were very helpful to promoting these progressive causes, like helping poor people and protecting their environment. But in our present political situation, what happened in the recent election, the Republicans put a gay referendum on in a lot of states, denying them the right to marry, and that brought out a lot of fundamentalist Christians, who voted against that referendum, but then also voted for a person who, in some ways doesn't represent, I think, the values that are required to progress our world, to help our world in general. Not because, like, a lot of times, our president does, protect our rights as Americans, but, in my opinion, he pretty much neglects to address the rights of many other people throughout the rest of the world. And so the point that I brought up was that while gays were important to progressive politics in '92, now I think they've become a detriment, so that we should be addressing. We shouldn't support them, because it's dangerous to support them, because there are more important things. Like, for example, there are 20,000 people, 18,000 of them children, who are dying every day of hunger and malnutrition. And the problem is, sure, it'd be great if we could, stand up for gays. It'd be great if we could stand up for every minority that needs our help. But when the issue is, if we stand up for one cause, then we weaken our ability to fight for and work on a much more important cause, then that doesn't seem that wise. And so prioritization with regard to goodness really does mean that we have to, it's not something we like to do, it's not something that's that we prefer to do, but sometimes we have to prioritize in terms of the good that we do. That even though we'd like to do all the good we can, sometimes doing one good will not allow us to do another. And so that's just another issue that needs to be addressed. Okay, now so let's move on to how we can prioritize, in our personal lives for happiness, to have our happiness and the happiness of those around us. All right, the first thing I think we should ask ourselves is well, how happy are we? 'Cause if we're very happy, if we're really very happy with our lives, I mean, it doesn't make sense to just have ourselves be such a great priority. I mean, if we've got everything we want, then it's great. We shouldn't. I mean, it doesn't make sense to want more if we're very happy, right? I mean, because that's very happy should be happy enough. So in that case, I think our priority really should be to help others, and that means helping our family first. Our spouse, our children, our friends, and then extending that help to our community, our immediate community, and the world at large. Okay, now, if we're not happy, if we find that in our personal life we're just not doing what makes us happy, then yeah, we shouldn't ignore our family and friends and responsibilities in the world in general, but it is very important to raise our level of happiness. It's very important for us to be very happy, because as we've done a lot of shows on this. The research shows that as we become happier, we become more able to help others. We become healthier. We earn more money. We're more successful. We're the kinds of things that are needed to be of good to those around us and to be of good to the world are amplified and made better by our own happiness. So it's just wise, from that standpoint alone, it's just very wise to work on our own happiness. And naturally, we can't, if we're not very happy, we can't work on our happiness excluding the happiness of others. There always has to be a balance. But in that sense, it really is very important to do that, to become as happy as possible. Okay, then another consideration we have to make is well, what do we have enough of? Let's say we're not as happy as we feel we should be. Do we have enough money? At our present jobs, are we making enough money to sustain our lives in the present and on to the future? in the way that we're accustomed to, in the way we feel we need? If so, then we may not want to prioritize, working extra hours to get a raise, working extra hours to get a promotion, to make more money. Because again, one of the clearest findings in happiness research over the last 40 years is making more money just does not create more happiness. So it just doesn't make sense from that standpoint. And it's the same with success and with education, with all these things. If we look at our lives and we find that what we have in these areas, education, knowledge, success, if we have enough of these, and yet we're not very happy, then clearly, if we don't learn this from experience, we should certainly learn this from the research. There are books on happiness one can get at the library or through a bookstore that will present the findings. Richard Layers, he's like one of the top economists in the world. He just wrote a book on happiness that came out last year. It's called Happiness, and he goes through this, just like the things that don't make us happy. So naturally, if we have enough of these things already, or if these things just aren't relevant to our personal happiness, it just doesn't make sense to go after them, because it doesn't do us any good, and it certainly doesn't do those around us any good either. If we're like expending our time, seeking things that we really don't need. Okay, sometimes prioritization will call upon us to make changes in our lives. Like, for example, let's say we're working at a job, and let's say we're not very happy, but we're making a lot of money, and or we're up for a promotion that our boss definitely wants us to get, that we have pressure to achieve, that's really not of our own doing, it's perhaps coming from other people. Sometimes prioritization requires that we make changes that require courage. Okay, so that means, like, if taking a job, earning less money, if not pleasing one's boss, if doing things that go against the grain of convention, against the grain of what we're taught we're supposed to be doing in society, if those things are called upon us, then yes, sometimes we have to have the courage to do what is in the interest of our best happiness and in the interest of the happiness of the world. Again, like, sometimes we live for the approval of others, like for the approval of our friends or our family or of our boss and all, and sometimes that becomes a priority over our own happiness. And if we're doing that, we've got to realize, hey, it's great to have others like approve of our actions, to approve of what we do, but if that's limiting our happiness, greatly, then no, that's just not the right answer, because probably it stands to reason that by our perhaps being a bit less concerned with the opinion of others and being more concerned with what will create more happiness for ourselves and others, eventually others will appreciate that more, even though they still may not like different aspects of what we've chosen. Okay, again, I want to, and the last thing about like personal prioritization, it's that it requires time. Okay, so much of how we structure our days is about time. We devote 8, 10, sometimes 12 hours to our work, and if we're devoting so much time, for example, to a job that is providing us, let's say, with 2, 3, 4 times the amount of like personal resources that we need, certainly that doesn't make sense. And some of us are in, actually, pretty much, this is kind of like difficult to understand in a sense, difficult to accept, but the reality is that probably pretty much all of us above the poverty line really have much more than we need to be very happy and very healthy. It's just that we've accustomed ourselves to really these lifestyles of a lot of material comfort and luxury and convenience. But really, even the poor of us, even this even goes below the poverty line to a certain extent. In this country, while in other countries, their poor people, are really like emaciated in many senses. 800 million people on the planet don't get enough calories to sustain their activities from day to day. in America, we're fortunate. The majority of our poor people are actually overweight. So so in general, we really can do with the resources we have, with the time we allot to our work. And so again, with the issue of time, it makes sense that if we're devoting so much time to just having much more than we need, we might want to think about it and start devoting more time to those things that we really really need. The happiness and the for others, the real food and resources they need. All right. I want to get into the global implications about this. I want to get back to the idea that there is half of our world that lives on less than $3 a day, and there are I think there are about 8 million people that die every year of hunger and malnutrition, and it's really unfortunate. The first world countries have really pretty much, for the most part, ignored this problem. To give you a figure of this, like we devote 1/1000th of 1% of our gross domestic product to foreign aid, and much of our foreign aid actually goes for political purposes, like to Israel, to defend them from the Arabs, etc. So in general, we devote extremely little to helping poor people, get enough to eat. That's certainly not what most of us think. That's certainly not what the media presents or what our government tends to present. But that really is the reality. And so in terms of in terms of happiness, in terms of the happiness of our world in general, we might want to consider that. If we're religious, we might want to consider this from a religious standpoint, that if we believe in God, then we'll adjust a merciful God really bless us with the happiness that we want, if we continue to ignore the needs of those who just don't even have enough to eat. And certainly, so if we're thinking about it from our perspective, it just makes sense to address those needs, for the sake of justice, for the sake of God's blessings. Okay, and the other part of that is that here in the first world, we're continually seeking to make more money, and this isn't just I can understand those among us who are poor, who want to rise above the poverty line, but many of us who are earning over $100,000 a year, over 200, 300, they still feel the need for more money. And this is very important prioritization, because the basic reality is that over the last 50 years, even though our personal wealth has increased 2.5 times, per capita, we're 2.5 times richer now than we were around World War II. We haven't become any happier, and actually there's even research that just emerged over the last few weeks that I noticed that apparently in the 1930s, in the midst of the Depression, people were happier than we are now. So again, in terms of these global priorities, these priorities related to financial matters, it just doesn't make sense to have money be such an important priority. Okay, I think, again, from a global perspective, I think if we want to address the issue of our greatest happiness as wisely and as comprehensively as possible, I think we have to address education. Basically, right here in the United States, we have a divorce rate of 50%. But the irony is that happiness is most related to our marriage relationship. I mean, our spouse, for most of us, is our most important source of happiness. Our happiness level is only 70% here in the United States. So basically, the idea behind this is these kids have to go through school from K through 12. 12 years of school, 13 years. They've got preschool. Sure, they've got to learn how to read, write, do math, and all. But there is more than enough time within their school days to teach them how to be happy and to teach them how to be good people. Again, the goodness is very important because happiness is not just about ourselves. It's about, those around us, our friends, our families, and all. And I think, kids will also learn that as they learn how to become better people, as they learn how to think about others as well as themselves and their happiness, they'll find that when they're surrounded with much happier people, it actually makes it much easier for them to feel much happier. Okay, and let's see. And again with education, life is really about happiness. It's not about learning. Sure, learning to read and write and math and all that has, that's important, that's necessary to our civilization right now, to the civilization we created, to our society. But much of what they learn in school, even in grammar school, just is not as important as happiness and goodness. So again, I think in terms of like the long-range global way to help our world become not just a happier world but a better world is to begin to just bring goodness and happiness into the school systems. Okay, and the last thing I want to deal with is just that we really have to prioritize happiness and goodness within politics and within government. This again relates to, everything in the United States is about money. And it's unfortunate because, again, according to the research, it just, for most of us, it doesn't make a difference. It's just very inconsequential to our happiness. But so we've got to encourage our politicians to not, spend so much time, so much effort just, focusing on our GDP, focusing on our productivity. It would probably, according to the research, happier people make more money. So actually, if our government decided to just devote a lot of time to helping us all become happier, they would probably find that our economy would just go up as a result. All right, that's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. In the future, we'll explore other topics designed to help us better enjoy life. This is George Ortega saying, be good, think well, feel very happy, and I hope you'll join us again next time here on The Happiness Show.
Happiness is powerful. It's our underlying need. Happiness is why we live each day. Happiness is destiny. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.